Holy shit, is that John Denver on the podcast?
I hope not.
You on my pillow.
What? Did you say you on my pillow?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
This is the PC Perspective Podcast, episode 526, being recorded. Oh, fixed camera. All right, being recorded.
We're good.
December 19th, 2018. This is our holiday extravaganza, last show of the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
We're all drinking hard liquor. Well, Alan, no, you're just drinking your Coke.
I just got a Coke.
All right, but most of us are well on our way to a fun evening.
Yep. Well, technically, it's the first show of the new year because it's New Year's Eve, everybody, and we're just let's see, what time is it? If you're on the East Coast, we're 1 hour and 48 minutes away from 2019 as we record this.
With Dick Clark's head. All right. Well, continuing to muddle through this introduction, I guess
we're just going to throw Jim off as much as we possibly can tonight. That's the goal.
I'm Jim. Hi. Who else is here?
There's some more.
Jeremy's here.
Hi, Jeremy.
Josh is here.
Hello.
Cheers, pre-Halloween Christmas thing, whatever.
Halloween. Did you say pre-Halloween?
Well,
It is before Halloween.
Hi, I'm
Technically, yes,
Sebastian.
it is pre-Halloween.
I'm also here.
Yeah.
I don't have a drink.
And yeah, for those who
Not very happy
are
about
listening only, you're missing out. Sebastian's quite well dressed this evening.
He's quite well endowed.
Well, I was looking for a Santa hat. I asked my wife for a Santa hat. She had this
She
scarf.
got you a toque.
There you
No,
go.
So I'm like,
that's
it's
a
kind of
French woolly.
festive. And then I grabbed one of my son's hats here because it's red, and we're ready to go.
But it works. It surprisingly works. And I'll give everyone a warning, too. If you're going to buy a cheap Santa hat on Amazon from a seller called A to Z Deals, with a Z at the end of the deals.
I've heard of that guy.
This is not one size fits all. I'm slowly reducing blood flow to my brain, which
Well,
we'll see how that
It'll
goes.
be good in about half an hour.
there, Jim. Like, there's a lot of
Not
them.
so much anymore.
Well,
Cheers.
I mean, they might not all be working, but there's
Yeah.
plenty of them.
All right. Well, you can join us here at PCPro.com. We normally do it Wednesdays at 10. Like I said, though, this will be the last show of the year. We'll be back after the Christmas holiday. And if you want to make sure you don't miss a show, you can go to our email subscription list at PCPro.com/subscribe, where you can put your name and email in, and we use that I forgot to do it again this week.
Send out the.
Did you do it?
No.
Okay.
I even tried to remind you.
Oh, God.
I mean, of course I did it.
You gotta set an alarm for that.
I did have an alarm, but I've been drinking. It's not okay. It's not okay. But we're gonna try. That's our New Year's resolution.
Against his doctor's recommendation.
We're gonna try to remember to do that going into the new year, and we just send that out to let you know when we go live normally. Ignore the run.
Jim.
Yes.
The reason we got you here tonight, all of us together. The AA meetings don't work if you don't go.
Well, hang on. Where's the A&E TV crew? This is interventions, right?
Look at all the cameras around
you don't drink
Come
enough.
on.
You need to work on this.
I need to improve my
Yes.
alcoholism to meet the minimum requirements of the intervention show. Okay.
All right.
Absolutely.
You're not there
And
yet.
you are supposed to be our leader, so come on.
Mhm.
Lead.
I'm working on it. Well, ignore the
The
rundown.
podcast.
We don't have a Patreon this week. I mean, we do have the Patreon up, but we would like you to look at something else this week where I'm going to shamelessly beg you for money, and that's for Extra Life. If you don't know, Extra Life is a fundraiser. It's been going on for like 10 years now, I think, and they have people pledge to do gaming marathons in support of the Children's Miracle Network of hospitals. And these are, I think it's like 150 different hospitals throughout the U.S. and Canada. Our Cincinnati Children's Hospital here is one of them. I know Sebastian's pledged to support his local hospital. So you can go on, donate, and all the proceeds go to helping supply treatments and services for millions of sick kids every year. And so it's a really great cause. And we are trying to, we've never done this before. I've never done this as a participant. I've pledged to other campaigns in the past. So we've got that up at pcper.com/extra-life. So please go there to check that out and consider supporting us. And we don't have a date yet scheduled because everything's kind of crazy for the holiday, but we're going to get a date where we're going to have that 24-hour marathon, and we'll let you know, and we'll have some fun and raise some money for a great cause. So again, that's pcpro.com/extra-life. And well, it feels kind of shameless now to talk about joshtech.com, but I guess we'll mention it. Joshtech.com.
Well, you know what? The holidays are here.
Yeah.
And what if you need that last minute gift for that special someone? What could be better than a Josh Tech mug?
I'm not sure.
Wall print.
Or wall print.
You know what?
Yes.
Let's all take the dive into the pool of conspicuous consumption.
Yes, but I'm not sure.
Nothing is more conspicuous than walking around in public in a Josh Tech shirt. It'll show how much consumption you are willing to take.
It will. But I'm not sure that anything you order now will be guaranteed for Christmas delivery. In fact, I'm pretty sure.
Probably not.
So forget all that. and just
Christmas
Order
2019.
yourself a
You can
Christmas
order
gift.
it. You can order it if it shows up, like, you know, while you're away on vacation, and one of those notorious package thieves takes it. At least you rest assured that they'll eventually probably bring it back.
that excellent point. See, we're thinking always of the silver lining here.
Glitter not included.
All right.
No glitter bombs.
Let's try to give these people some content this week, shall we?
There's a decent list going here.
I know, but at this rate, we're never gonna get to it. Let's jump in. We got some reviews. Alan got a Samsung review for us this week. Samsung Enterprise SSD.
Enterprise SSD Roundup. A whole bunch of Samsung Enterprise
Round 'em up.
SSDs. So they sent me 8 of them. I don't know what they were thinking. Also, I don't know what I was thinking accepting 8 of them, because, you know, a round of enterprise tests takes, you know, a day or two to get all the numbers you need. And, you know, you multiply that by 8, and, you know, needless to say, I've been sitting on these for a while, just crunching away on the test bed. We didn't have a lot of other comparison points to go off of, because we don't do a lot of enterprise storage testing. But some interesting stuff in here. So basically, they've launched these are channel SSDs. So I think we touched on this last week. I think we kind of like mentioned it, or we mentioned it in the past, at least, when Samsung had an event in New York. They flew me out to it, and they flew some of the other sites out to it as well. And the big deal was, we always hear Samsung make these grandiose claims of, you know, Flash Memory Summit seems every year they have some announcement. Oh, now we can put 32 terabytes in one small 2.5-inch SSD, and there's going to be an enterprise thing. And then the next year they're like, oh, now we're stacking our NAND higher, and 64 terabyte in one small package SSD. And it's like, oh, wow, these are all, you know, amazing things. And then they have like some PCI Express SSD parts that were supposed to be like super, super fast. But nobody could ever get them. Right? This is really annoying when it gets to the point where you can announce it all you want. It's almost like you're crying wolf, because nobody can actually see it, test it, like outside of the couple of very large companies that are just on Samsung's short list of who gets these products, right? So now, finally, after many years, they've got to the point where they're putting enterprise SSDs into the channel. In other words, just like retail. So you should be able to find these particular types of SSDs, SATA, M.2 NVMe. It's realize it's a little bit longer than your standard M.2 NVMe. It's a M.2 22110, because there's a lot more on these things. Since they're enterprise, they have more flash. They have, you know, just need more space on the PCB. So we've got some of those. Realize the SATA parts are meant for really kind of like your more mass storage type of thing. They're SATA. They're not super fast. The idea is not to really hammer on them a lot, but just to use them for storage that's faster than hard drive storage.
Sure.
Right? You know, think just big array of these sitting in a server in place of 10 or 15,000 RPM hard drives, basically, is what these would be displacing. However, we go all the way up to the Z SSD, which is something that we have been hearing about for the past year or two, and this is using Samsung's Z NAND. It's not V NAND, even though it works the same, but it's basically Samsung's usual 3D NAND, just designed slightly differently. It runs in SLC mode. Actually, this one might run in MLC mode. I wasn't sure which version they were on for this particular product, actually. But the idea is they've managed to get their own NAND to respond way faster than it used to respond in like your typical client consumer SSDs like your 970s and whatnot. So let's see. We can just kind of bounce around this. There's no sense going through every single part of this.
Okay.
But the long and short of it is probably for the 883 series, which is SATA, the 983 U.2 and M.2s, which are NVMe PCI Express. Those are all NAND products. I focused on quality of service and what their specs were and how the product behaved compared to their specs. For the most part, met or exceeded the specs pretty much across the board on all these things. No surprises. The numbers themselves are actually very good if you were to try to compare them against any other quality of service or latency specs for any other enterprise products. Samsung has always been really good at this. It's just that it's always been on paper as far as the reviewers have been able to discuss. So now we're actually able to, do they meet their claims? And the answer is pretty much a resounding yes.
Okay.
They meet their claims. So if you're, in the market for small or large scale sort of, NAND flash in some form factor, they probably have it covered and it'll probably do well.
A lot of charts in this article.
Yeah, well,
what are those X's off the charts?
The X's are off the charts because I didn't want to increase the scale so that I'm trying to keep the lines spread out somewhat so you can read them easily. But then I had to keep the scale the same for all the parts so you can compare against them if you were trying to. So
what are the X's representing there?
So that chart is showing latency in number of nines on the right side, and then like the average is the 50% point, which is the second one over, and then 1% is like the bottom 1% latency. But the idea is enterprise customers, they're running databases. They're typically very sensitive to what are going to be the longest requests that I see and how often am I going to see them. And that's in enterprise parlance, that's referred to in number of nines. So in other words, if you look at, say, the 4 nines on that chart where it's 99.99%, that means that the slowest requests will be, everything 99.99% of the requests will be faster than that number.
Okay.
Right. So the idea is as you increase the number of nines, you're becoming more and more restrictive on how many of those requests can be slower than whatever that number is. Right. And on that chart Jim is showing is those lines should be below the X's of the same color. So pretty much it's good there. The blue line, the blue X's are actually relating to the very bottom blue line, the QDepth 1 line.
And the green X's are part of the product name. So this is the X883
DCT 3.84 terabyte X.
To the X power.
TBX.
To the X power, yes.
Is it pronounced X or 10?
Or chai?
Is that the 10,
one's
8,
pronounced
3,
X.
883?
The other's pronounced 10.
X.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm taking notes.
Also interesting. I mean, that's like a nearly 4 terabyte, SATA part there. So real easy to get a lot of NAND storage into, especially if you have a old chassis, be it SAS or SATA, that has some sort of an array functionality to it. You can get a lot of flash in there,
Sure. Now, you said those. So these are finally into the channel where anyone can really go buy them. But
Yes.
who that couldn't get this before through their direct dealings with Samsung is going to buy this? Who would want to buy this?
Any form of small business or or even some of the larger OEMs, like not just larger businesses that might not have been large enough. Because I mean, we're talking like it might have been like Dell and like one other big player or something like that. Nobody knows exactly who the companies were, but you're talking, you have to think like super high scale, and they were only working with one or two of these extremely large companies.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe Amazon was one of them. We're talking like that scale, right? So that pretty much precludes it from anybody else, right? Because they were only working with these very limited number of partners. So now it's at the point where, if you have a database server and you need some storage for it, and you want storage that's rated to, do well in that sort of a 24/7, kind of like a high workload sort of thing, right? And remember, these products are rated to handle 4K random access across the whole span of the disk, which is not going to be what you get for any sort of a consumer grade SSD, right? So these are going to have things like additional over provisioning. That's a nearly 4 terabyte capacity, but the amount of flash on it is probably a decent amount more than that. It might have like say 20% more installed flash, just to be able to handle, handle a good amount of performance consistently with some very good quality of service numbers, and to do it with, in what I would consider like the worst case possible scenario for how you're loading it down.
Okay.
Right.
And what do you got to pay for that?
Most of these parts, most of the NAND parts are running around 35 cents a gig.
Okay.
Which is really pretty.
That's not horrific for enterprise type.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for enterprise parts. Especially if you go all the way to the M.2 NVMe or the U.2 NVMe parts. Usually are paying a decent premium for NVMe over SATA, and it's not that big of a swing. Actually, the prices are, if you scroll down a little bit more. You end up going from like 33, 34 cents a gig for the SATA stuff to about 37 cents a gig for the NVMe stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those 983 ZETs are a little...
Yes. Okay. So the 983 ZET,
and then the P4800X.
Well, right. I included that for comparison because that's what the ZET drive is supposed to be competing against. And this is the Z SSD. This is Samsung's solution, or at least attempted solution, to compete with Optane from Intel. Now, granted, it's not as fast as Optane, but it's close. And if you go to, I think it's like, I would just go to the performance comparisons page there, second from the last page. So we're going to look at kind of like a few little bits and pieces of like quality of service. So this is a quality of service plot. It's showing it's a high resolution form of, it's like derived from IO percentile data. So it's sort of like latency percentile, but it's for quality of service. So the number of nines is now vertical on the axis there. The idea is you want to be to the left. The further to the left you are, the quicker you are. And the more vertical you are, the more consistent you are. Mm-hmm. Right? Optane is orange on this chart. And you'll notice that while Optane is faster for more of the time, like 90%.
That's a really interesting plateau in the middle of that.
So Optane kind of takes a corner at the 99% point. So 1% of the requests from Optane are actually on the other side of the Z SSD, right? So as long as you're okay with, it's going to depend on what your requirements are, right? But here's one thing to consider. The fact that the Z SSD is to the left at all compared to the Optane drive is surprising, because this is flash memory versus 3D crosspoint memory, which is known to be way faster than flash, right? So that's pretty impressive. But if you look at the IOPS, which is actually in the legend there, Z SSD can only handle roughly half of the performance. If you were trying to think of in terms of like average performance, you're like a half to a third when you do this, when you shift over to flash memory. But Optane usually is like 10 times faster than NAND stuff. So the fact that you're not 10x anymore, you're compared to this drive, like this actually cuts it by a significant margin and is a much faster product. Mm-hmm. If you next chart down is when you start doing a mixed workload. Now we start seeing flash has its limits, regardless of how fast you make it, right? So the Optane part is just faster regardless, compared to either one of the two capacities of the Z SSD, right? It just can't.
It's like a waterfall of results.
Yeah, man.
If you go to do writes, you can tell something else here, and that is we're showing Q depth 1, 2, and 4 on these charts, and you can tell that the Z SSD, both capacities, each of the two performs very similarly, compared with each other. But if you see every time you double the Q depth, the latency shifts over by the same amount, which is actually doubling in these charts. That means that if you're writing at Q depth 1, if you give it any more workload than that, it doesn't go any faster. So the latency doubles, right? And it's a very strong indicator of that if you see a chart do that. So what that tells us is that it can, as long as you're not loading it heavily, it can be surprisingly close to Optane. But as soon as you stack more than one request at a time on it, you've now exceeded its ability to scale up and go any faster. Things just take longer instead.
Sure.
Right.
But that disadvantage is reflected in its pricing.
Yes, that's the thing you have to tailor looking at all of this with. Actually, if you scroll down a few more charts, you can go past you go to like the last chart there.
Your charts look so much like Christmas tree lights.
Sorry.
It's Christmas.
Ooh, this is a new one, isn't it?
No, I've shown it in Optane reviews before. So this is a write pressure test. So the idea is you're testing the latency of random reads. You're only asking for one read at a time. Okay, so it's just queue depth 1. And you're just seeing how long do those take. And that's kind of a light workload. You're not stacking anything on it or anything like that. But in parallel with that, as you go from left to right, you're increasing the amount of random writes that are going on in the background. Okay, so you're kind of like adding background load to it while you're trying to see how quickly you can read from it. Okay, and then what's being plotted is the latency of those reads. So the lower, the better. And the further to the right you can go means that the drive was able to handle faster and faster incoming writes. And of course, the latency of the reads is going to climb because you're kind of loading the drive down, right?
Yeah, this graph looks a lot more what I expected, Optane versus traditional.
Yes. So traditional NAND will usually be even higher on the left edge of this chart. Usually NAND will start 50, 60, just depending, as far as the read latency. But here we see, this is within 2x of Optane, which is phenomenal for Flash. But the catch is, as soon as you put any load on it, that latency immediately starts climbing because now the Flash is trying to do writes at the same time it's trying to do random reads, and things are just going to go slower, right? And notice those lines kind of end pretty quickly as for the two ZET drives. And that's because they just can't go faster than like 100,000 IOPS for random writes. They're not even rated to do it. So the criteria for the plot to end on these is if the drive didn't go the speed that we were trying to make it go for the random writes. If it doesn't meet that, we don't plot the latency anymore because it basically didn't pass the test beyond that point, right? But this is where Optane kind of shows the worth the money, right? Because it's able to go all the way up to greater than 2.2 gigabytes per second worth of 4K random writes and is still able to do random reads faster than like NAND would do random reads typically.
Just trying to imagine the system that'd make use of that. That's insane.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the point in the middle of the chart, which is at like 1.2 gig per second, if you're writing to it at 1.2 gig per second, which is 300,000 random write IOPS in the background, its latency is still faster than the ZSSD's latency if the ZSSD had zero load on it. So it's just, that's just Optane showing its colors, right? That's just one thing that Optane stuff has been really good at. But going back to the pricing, right, which was back on that next page, if you want to spend around $3 per gig, you get Optane. Now, granted, when Optane launched, it was higher. Optane was more like, what was it, like $5 a gig ish, something like that. When the P4800X launched. So the ZSSD is $2.50 a gig compared to around $3 a gig for P4800X. Now, as I was looking at the results, I hadn't looked at the current street price for the Optane part, and I was kind of expecting the ZSSD to be able to make a better argument. Like, the performance does these weird things, but it costs half as much as Optane. But it's not half as much, right? Maybe that price will come down somewhat on the ZET drive to better compete. But as it sits currently, the price seems kind of high. Maybe Intel dropped the price of their P4800X in response to the fact that this other SSD even exists.
Mhm.
That might be the reason that the price has come down for the Intel part. So, just things to consider. Yeah, but overall, impressive showing. Good to see enterprise parts actually materialize out of Samsung in a way that you can, get your hands on. And it's pretty much all there is to say. It was good stuff.
You probably know if you need it, though.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why the charts are kind of confusing to read for if you're just a guy that's usually buying SSDs for your mom's laptop and whatnot. Like you're probably gonna glaze over trying to read those charts. But the enterprise customers or the guys that have databases that they have specific workloads and specific needs, they know what to look for on those charts. They know what column they're looking for. They know what performance they expect. So that's why unfortunately for these reviews, we can only try to laymanize the information so much. Otherwise, it will bore the crap out of the actual customers of who.
And how many charts did you say you had in that? When you were putting it together, it was like over
50
right?
something.
Well, no,
it started with over 100, and I was just like, no, I have to like pare this down. So I ended up not including some of the other data that we've included in the past, or at least figured out a way to distill it into merge more than one thing on the same chart.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you need a drive like that, check out the full review. PC Per Allen's got pages and pages of all the good stuff, and he's very receptive to tweets and emails asking for additional information.
Yep.
So please send all your questions to twitter.com/Malventano.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to
right.
help.
That wasn't even 20 minutes. What the hell? You need to go on way longer.
Sorry.
This is enterprise. This is like 5 enterprise SSDs. You disappoint me.
It's 8 enterprise SSDs. Sorry.
We saving it up for the
Alan,
P1.
Could we go back to some of those screenshots and just leave them on the screen while you
play guitar?
explain things more?
No. There's SSDs and they're standing on a table.
They're standing. I mean, some of them are laying on the table.
Yes, that's true. Some of
And
them
they want to break free.
Some of them were lazy. Some of them were more
I mean, I
upstanding.
appreciate the aesthetics of that shot, though. I like how you reversed the rear SSD, so it was more symmetrical with the.
I like the use of
mounting
negative
bracket
space in this composition.
Yeah.
Is that
Are you
is the
saying,
horizon
Sebastian?
crooked?
The horizon is the
yes,
back.
it is.
Be nice, Jim.
No, I'm just trying to.
Be
The
nice.
horizon is crooked due to the way I was standing at a slight angle.
Yeah.
Yes, that's generally how that happens.
Actually, wait. I might have been perfectly straight because if you looked at the left edge of that table back there, the paper starts to slope off. because
don't blame the
it's
table.
hanging off the edge of the table.
The table
So-
didn't do anything.
Don't blame
Sorry.
the table for your shoddy workmanship.
What'd the table ever do to you? Sorry, Sebastian. I did not have. I did not purchase an IKEA table.
Alan, it's called Photoshop. Just get rid of the line.
Yeah, I could have, but I
Whoa.
just
Oh, it needs the horizon though.
sorry.
It does. You're
It
right,
gives it a sense
Jeremy.
of depth.
Yes,
It does. It takes me to a place that I didn't think SSDs could take me.
But $3 a gig, you'd hope.
You guys are going to stretch this out to a whole hour, aren't you?
Yep.
All right. Well,
Let's talk more about the
It's
bokeh in
already
that shot.
8:40 in my time.
let's move on. Let's have Sebastian sing us a review of a very impressive Scythe Ninja 5.
It's like a brick of
air-cooled.
fans. Holy crap!
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Look at this. Look at this thing.
What kind of
bigger than your
instrument is
head.
that?
That is.
What is what?
What kind of instrument is that?
It's
I guess you could
an
This
strum
is,
it.
It's an automated
a percussive.
jaw harp.
Or actually, it's a.
It's an accordion.
Jim, I'm gonna need you to
It's a
fix that
washboard.
in post.
Oh.
It needs to be like a harp.
Oh, okay. I was thinking more like a banjo, but
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds like a really, really crappy washboard.
Yes. So this is the Ninja 5. And at first glance, this looks a lot bigger than the previous Ninja. But according to the specs and comparing them side by side, this is actually exactly the same big square
I don't.
heatsink. It's 130 millimeters by 130 millimeters.
Have any of us seen a heatsink larger than this before?
I mean,
Ask Lori.
that's bigger
For
than
one
N15.
unit, like if you look at the top of it, it's kind of like a semi-quad thing, but it's all connected. So usually heat sinks this big, you're dealing with dual towers, and they're only connected by the heat pipes. This is all one big unit. It has 6 big heat pipes on it.
Wow.
I mean, from
That's
side to
serious
side,
business, man.
This is a pretty girthy 7 inches of cooler right here.
Yeah.
Dual 120 millimeter fans. The previous Ninja, I didn't want to make this like a straight up Ninja 4 to 5 thing. The previous Ninja had just one fan and it had a switch on it. It could go low, medium, high. And basically in testing this, these fans max out at 800 RPM. They're very low speed, very quiet fans. They're PWM fans this time. No switch control. And because of that, 2 fans at 800 RPM is actually about the same as the old single fan Ninja 4, which max out at closer to 1500 RPMs with its single fan. So they both have about the same cooling capacity, but this one is able to use lower fan speeds. You can be very conservative with your fan profile if you want to and make these almost completely silent and still move enough air to have a cooler like this. If you're looking at the graph, it with a very conservative fan profile that I use for all this cooler testing, still comes very close to the performance of the H100i Pro. That's a 240 millimeter liquid cooler on its Xtreme preset. That's with the pump running at full RPMs and the fans running with a very aggressive fan profile.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ninja 5 is still able to move enough air that just quietly goes about its business and is one of the best air coolers that I've tested to date. The noise of some of these newer liquid coolers, though, is very impressive. So the Ninja 5 is actually kind of like middle of the pack just with this small group of 3 here.
Mm-hmm.
So
are all of the fins
still, I mean,
are all the fins in the center of that black anodized? Or is it just the top and the bottom?
Just the top. Just the top.
It was hard to tell from the pictures.
Yeah. So we're talking somewhere around 33 decibels was the loudest recorded at full load with both fans going at 800 RPM. So it's very quiet. And while I've recorded lower noise levels from the Ninja 4 and the older Noctua NHD 14, with my current setup and the fact that no matter what I did, I could not get anything lower than 31.4 dBA on my sound pressure meter. This is basically inaudible in the room. Like everything here was shut down. I had every electronic device in the house turned off, and I still had 31.4, and it was barely registering. Like I got like a tick over that at idle, and then only went up about a decibel and a half under full load. So this thing is inaudible with anything else running. You won't be able to hear it over like your GPU idle fan. It's so quiet, even under load. So great option if you have the space for it. My point in the review and what I think about, like, big air coolers typically are going to give you better performance per dollar than a liquid cooler. And if you have something with a surface area this big, you're generally going to get as good, if not better performance than even like 240, 280 millimeter liquid coolers. It's just implementation. Like, do you have 160 plus millimeters of height and basically 7 inches of width on your system? And then this will interfere with tall memory too. So if you have tall RAM modules, you're going to have to raise up the back fan quite a bit, or even omit it if they're that tall. This doesn't quite interfere with the heatsink, like against your memory, but the fan definitely does get in the way. Like in the review, there's a picture where the fan is basically sitting on top of standard height DDR4 DIMMs. So anything with a heatsink at all, you're going to have to move that fan.
I guess
so that's a consideration.
I guess you probably don't have a rear case fan if you have this installed, because it's probably about reaching that mounting point.
You could probably just get rid of the rear case.
Yeah,
it comes really close. Like,
okay,
and my board is kind of a base.
You got a bit of space.
You could fit one in. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my N15S, it put that front case fan there was right above the memory slots. It has the detent on it, and it looks like this one's front to back a little bit longer, but top to bottom it's a little bit narrower than the N15. Because I know that it was it was from the top of the motherboard right down to that first PCI slot. And this looks like a whole lot cleaner than it.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, because that thing was huge.
Imagine this on an ITX board.
It would be so cute.
I want to. I want to put it on ITX board. I didn't have time. One interesting thing about this that I'll throw out there I don't remember if I covered it in the review or not. The mounting mechanism for this, they've slightly revised it. And I always thought that Scythe was like just behind Noctua for like the quality of their mounting mechanism, but it felt more secure, if that makes any sense. Like when you tighten these down, you have so much extra, like you can keep going until you basically buckle your board. You can put as much force against your CPU as you want to, where Noctua's kind of back themselves off and have a spring. And while this has a spring, you can just keep going and going, and it basically has so much force that I wonder if that's one of the reasons that it does provide such good cooling. And the Ninja 4 before it, this mounting mechanism seems to do a really good job with even just a moderate amount of thermal paste of making a really good solid connection. But the interesting thing about this is if you've used a Noctua, the SecuFirm 2 mounting system, or you've used a Scythe mounting system, they have these little plastic big black washers that go over the mounting screws that are on the back bracket. And you have to kind of like hold the back bracket in place or set the board down on top of the bracket. And then the washers just sort of lay over that. And then you have to put the bracket on, you have to screw it on. And if you're doing it vertically, then half the time you drop the bracket behind the motherboard. If you're me,
I've been there and done that.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
The washers that come with this are rubber lined. So as soon as you push them over the screws, they hold the back bracket in place. And everything is just in place. So you're actually done mounting everything. It was just like the little thing, but it made it twice as fast to actually install the thing. So I really like that. And apparently that's their new mounting system. So all of their newer coolers are going to have it. And then out of the box, this thing does support AM4. That's standard now. Before you had to get their optional AM4 bracket. So it's a really good product. I haven't seen it listed anywhere. PC Part Picker didn't have anything. It wasn't on Amazon. And it was no listing at all on Newegg. One of the commenters did point out that at a store in the Netherlands, one of the bigger like cooling stores online had it for 45 euros. So that's well below the MSRP that I had, which was $79.99, which is a little. It's fair considering you're getting similar results to one of the bigger Noctua coolers for about $10 less. But if it ends up being that aggressively priced here, it'll be a steal. Right now, the Ninja 4s are on clearance. Scythe USA has a sale through Newegg, and Newegg is shipping. It's $35 for the Ninja 4. So that's such an amazing cooler for $35. It's a no-brainer. And then the AM4 mounting kit is only $550. So $40, a little over $40 with free shipping, you can get a tremendous cooler. This one will be taking its place. Like that sale will be over by the end of this month and they'll be gone. But I expect to see this one on the market somewhere between $50 and $60 US, and that'll be a really good deal for what you're getting for a big dual fan cooler that can handle virtually any modern CPU and do it as efficiently as even a larger liquid cooler.
All right, great. So just if you can find those $35 Ninja 4s though, that's the good value now, but wait.
Yeah, Newegg has them right now in stock in the US. That's a steal. We're talking like $5 more than a Hyper 212 Evo for a cooler that beats almost everything I've ever tested it against. But yeah. Keep your eyes open for the Ninja 5 when it shows up in stores.
Great. Next up, we got a power supply review from Lee. It's the Corsair Platinum Series SFX power supplies. He got in both the 450 and 600 watt models. The testing he did, though, was focused, the detailed testing was on the 600 watt variant, and he gave it very excellent reviews. It's a fully modular platinum rated power supply, 92 millimeter fan, but it has a quiet mode, a 0 RPM mode, so you're not going to hear it at all until you reach a good load. And even then, he said it's very quiet. Individually sleeved cables that come with it. So good there. It surpassed all of its platinum efficiency ratings. And the pricing, too, is not bad for an SFX power supply, high quality, fully modular supply. MSRP on the 450 is 120, and on the 600 watt it's 150. He did note one thing though.
Short cables?
Yes, this could be good or bad. I mean, if you get those SFX supplies, sometimes the cables are too long, and you have to buy a special short kit or make your own if you're so adventurous. But this comes with them. It comes with short cables out of the box. So as long as that's going to suit your case, great. And if not, just plan for it and pick up an additional standard length set when you can.
And
But look at those; they're individually sleeved.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
Oh, yeah.
They're sleeved, and that's they're separate wires
individually
that are sleeved.
Yep.
Right, so you'll be able to, even if they were a little bit longer than what you needed, you'll be able to more easily kind of like wrap those around and tuck them in, out of the way places.
And I mean, if you had a pin tool, you could cut them to length because they're individually sleeved.
You could if you had a tool to pull those
it
out.
wouldn't be the most difficult thing in the world to modify those cables if you wanted to.
Yeah, you're already 90% of the way there, just having all the stuff. You might need some more. Might need some more crimp.
So how many people actually tear apart their power supply cables and recrimp them?
You'd be surprised.
Did you see the size of that computer over there?
If you want the ultimate build, Alex.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find the there we go, the port selection, the power power ports. Is that the right word? Power cable.
Sure.
But
Power
the things you can
modular,
Yeah.
the modular whatever.
Yeah, so,
Connections.
Modular connectors.
so
Yeah.
probably
Connections?
sufficient for
That's sufficient for most.
for an SFX system at this wattage. But you got your 24 pin. You've got
Hey, what's that video card that had 3 8-pin?
it was like
AMD.
this,
I mean, several of the
R9
highest
295
end cards do
X2?
now.
Yeah, 295X2, I think.
But you can
Yeah.
get there's third-party 1080 Ti's that have 3 probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you don't need. Well, okay, so you can get cables that split into 2.
I don't think you're going to need one of those GPUs in an ITX system. Let's just put it that way.
No,
Yeah.
No,
you're
it's going to
not
be
gonna
hard to
want
fit.
one.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be taking power away from your CPU.
Yeah, and if you're going with an overkill card like that, you're probably going to have a power hungry CPU too. So, but yeah, I mean, you could do as Alan was saying. You don't need a dedicated 8-pin. You got the split 8 and 6+2s.
Yeah, there's one that's it's an 8-pin on one end and it's a pair of 6+2s on the other end. Usually.
And so you could do an SLI setup depending on the rest of your requirements. But it could be better, but not great or not terrible. I mean, I should say for the power or the port. Again, port,
and
that
one of
doesn't
those
sound right. Port selection.
And one of those is meant for your 4-pin to the CPU.
Yeah, you need one
well,
for the CPU.
so-
Yeah, at least one.
But
Although
it's
I guess
small
on an
form
SFX
factor.
board, you're
I
not
mean,
gonna-
how many people are going to have
Yeah.
SLI or Crossfire small form factor?
Yeah.
Very few.
You've got one PCI slot anyway, so what are you going to do?
I guess that's true. Yeah, if you're using the ITX boards. All right, well, check that out. That's what was the exact model name again? It's the Corsair Platinum Series SFX 450 and 600 watt power supplies.
I've got to admit, Corsair is one of the better companies in speccing out their products. I mean, they don't actually produce their power supplies. They hand out the designs to other, manufacturers. But boy, they have pretty good quality control and pretty good designs. I mean, that's one area that they have really excelled in the past 5 years since they entered it.
Absolutely. And I apologize. I didn't realize we had this extra review from Alan also in the system, so I had to bring that up here.
Oh,
But
sorry.
we've got another one, folks, though this one's a little more consumer friendly.
It is very consumer friendly.
It's a Crucial P1 500 gigabyte and 1 terabyte M.2 NVMe reviews. It's more QLC.
Yeah. So remember the Intel 660p that came out a couple months ago that was nearly identical to this. So Intel and Micron are still, it hasn't been called off yet, but they're still jointly making.
So
flash.
they're still friendly.
They're still friendly. This is probably one of the last joint.
Fellows?
They're friends with benefits.
Yeah, maybe. At least as far as the fab goes.
Yeah.
It's so fab.
It's so fab. So 4-bit per cell flash.
So
memory.
one drunk engineer calls the other in the middle of the night. So yeah, for laying down some metal layers
some wafers.
tonight. Yeah, on some wafers.
It's like, well, you know, I have to keep this fab at full capacity.
You want to spin my wafer?
Yields are going to be terrible.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thing.
Doesn't matter
Only you
because the
guys.
capacity is so large.
All right. So QLC flash, it runs in either 4 bit per cell, or it can run in an SLC mode, which gives you a dynamic cache. Same way that the 660p worked, except even though the flash is the same and the controller is the same, it's very much down to firmware differences between those two products. So whenever you see differences in performance here going through these charts, it's pretty much due to firmware and how the drives are tuned. So overall, the crucial part, the P1, tends to run slower than pretty much anybody, including the Intel 660p. So it's on the low side, especially for low QDepth random reads, which we're usually kind of sensitive to, because that's what shows you kind of like how the system feels with this. Now, granted, it's not horrible. It's just on the low side, right? Mm-hmm. Sequential performance, pretty much where we would expect it to be. No real surprises there. And we have some mixed workload. If you look at the 1 terabyte drive during the mixed workload test, performs competitive with the other drives. However, the 0.5 terabyte model looked a little odd. And then if you go to the next chart there, which counts up the total amount of read service time, the 0.5 terabyte model's 500 gig. Again, what the heck is that? It's like 2 to 3x longer to do some of this stuff compared to even the 1 terabyte model of the same product, which seemed odd. So here's another chart that's been in the suite the whole time, but I never have used it for a review because I've never had to before. This is the breakdown of where that bar came from, which is to say the mixed burst test actually runs 6 passes during the suite while the test suite is running. Same workload, just 6 different times. Each pair is with the drive filled to a different amount. So the drive is mostly empty for the first 2. It's half full for the middle 2, and then it's mostly full for the right 2. And you notice, as soon as the drive was all the way full, and you hit it with this workload, it didn't like it. Not one bit. So the performance really, really fell off. What I suspect happened, and this was very repeatable, I reran the test 3 times on the 500 gig drive just to see, like, if maybe it was going to do something different. Never behaved any differently. Turns out this test is run not too long after the drive has been filled to whatever the next capacity is. So since the drive does dynamic caching and it basically can shift around, it can have more of its media acting as a cache, and then as you fill it, it has to shift that around and make it so that you clear up more space. So then then you'll have less cache that's possible, but you'll have more QLC flash to store all the extra bits that you were just trying to put on the drive, right? What I suspect is happening here is the drive is in the middle of trying to empty some more space, and to basically reduce the cache further, increase the amount of available bulk capacity that's there, so that you're able to fill the drive all the way. I stopped short, like 16 gigs short of filling it, but if you push an SSD that far and it was trying to do dynamic caching, it has to do some work, right? So what we're doing is this workload happens to be applied while the SSD is trying to basically correct itself for our suite having just dumped another 200 gig worth of data on it in a relatively short amount of time. So it's kind of an edge case. And also, if you're buying the smallest capacity drive of this, you're probably putting it in like your mom's computer, and she's probably not putting 500 gigabytes worth of stuff on it.
I just want to point out, that's twice in this episode you've disparaged moms.
Just the parents.
There can be some tech-savvy moms out there.
Moms eat SSDs too.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The only family member I have left on the immediate family side is my mother-in-law. So I always that's how it equates in my head with, I have to fix my mom's computer.
No, sure. But
right?
we should clarify that there are many moms who are very tech-savvy.
Also true. I
don't want to end up in a hashtag here.
Basically, if you're just building a computer for somebody, and they're just checking email and just doing stuff with it, it's relatively simple. They're probably not going to fill it all the way anyway.
Yeah, right.
And if they do, they're probably not going to immediately run a mixed workload on it right after they just put 200 gig worth of stuff on it, right?
You know, on this subject, I just have to say that moms need SSDs. And here's why. My mom's laptop, she's dropped this thing, I want to say 3 times in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where there's no actual damage. Well, okay, one time she broke the screen. I replaced that for her. But every time she drops it while she's using it, she kills the hard drive. I've had to replace 2 spinning hard drives in this thing. It's just the next time it's getting an SSD. Because at least that way, there's one less thing for me to replace the next time it gets dropped off of the side of her easy chair.
Yeah. Turns out record players don't do well in flight. Just saying.
Although
hard drive is basically a record player.
Well, hey, if the tracking force is strong enough,
well,
I mean,
you don't have a
you
record
put like
left.
20 grams.
What if it's going at 75 RPM and you throw it perpendicular to the surface of the Earth at 85 feet per second?
Then it would go.
Anyway,
It depends on where the arm is. And anyway.
Okay, so now we've established we've got this part from Crucial. It performs less so than the equivalent part from Intel, but the hardware is the same. So clearly there has to be some kind of gains that were made here from that sacrifice. And that sacrifice is shown full force on the caching test. These are the best results I've ever seen come out of the caching test, or any similar caching test that we've run ever. In that the drive never runs at a speed other than SLC.
Mm-hmm.
This is that's the 1 terabyte drive. Go down to the next chart. That's the 0.5 terabyte drive. These tests are run with the drive half full. You know, for the half terabyte drive.
Well, that's if you're an optimist.
Well, sorry.
It's half useless.
So, you know, you're able to throw repeatedly again and again. You can throw 50 gigabytes worth of data at this thing over a course of 60 seconds. And even if you only gave it 6 or 3 seconds of a break between 2 of those passes, it's still going the full SLC speed immediately after. So it's doing pretty darn good there. I actually have a link in the paragraph below it, which goes straight to the page from the 660p review. And if you scroll down to the 3 charts down there, that's the cache test of the 660p.
Oh, ugly.
So while it was able to go full speed, it was occasionally going at the bulk media speed, which for that drive was around like 50 meg per second or something like that, 50 or 60 meg per second, I think. So, and even the Intel drive was doing that kind of inconsistently. It was going slow towards the beginning of each pass, as if it was trying to do some sort of, we were catching it off guard, and like it had to go, oh wait, you actually wanted to write to me at full speed? Okay, let me stop doing what I was doing in the background and give you full speed. That's kind of like how it was behaving.
Sounds like it's got a bad attitude.
It's how it behaved, right? Usually it's the opposite for a cache test. Usually you get full speed and then it runs out of cache and then it falls down, right? And it goes down to whatever the slow speed is. So just, you know, that is a night and day difference between 2 parts of the same hardware. Again, really just down to how Crucial decided to tune the firmware. And, you know, in my opinion, I think those minor sacrifices were probably worth it, because this kind of puts this part even further into like an enthusiast, you know, kind of drive. As long as you don't fill it all the way and get the smallest one, if you were a person that was worried about not having enough cache on a drive, or the cache not lasting long enough, or say you occasionally do copy large things over to it, it looks like this drive will handle that better than the equivalent, you know, the only other QLC SSD that we've tested. So, and the price, not bad, 17, 18 cents a gig.
Wow.
You know, for a decent performing.
Cheap.
Yeah, that's straight from, that's not even looking at sale prices. That's straight from Crucial's own website, because they do direct sales also. You might be able to find this for cheaper elsewhere. So those are good prices. They're supposed to be a 2 terabyte. They announced it initially. It's just, it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't materialized yet. Not sure why. But, you know, 5-year warranty, less than 20 cents a gig. I mean, you know.
How would you compare this to like the BPX Pro? The 1 terabyte.
I have, that's in the charts. I put that in the charts.
Oh, okay.
It is behind the BPX Pro, because BPX Pro was surprisingly good performance.
With the new or the old firmware?
This is actually the old firmware. I retested BPX Pro with the new firmware, and the differences for our suite, the way our suite does the testing, differences weren't enough to even justify doing like another write-up on it. It really wasn't. The way we test, it wasn't really a big difference, which probably translates to if you were just worried about the actual experience of using it, that firmware update was probably not a large difference. I think it mostly helped with
corner cases,
your crystal disk mark, synthetics, and stuff like that. I think that's what they were, And now I don't feel personally that those really short tests that are run most of the time on an otherwise empty brand new SSD, I don't think that really paints the whole picture, right? Like our suite actually puts some information on the drive and fills it up and redoes the test at multiple points and does all these weighted averages and stuff. So it tries to get, a more realistic picture of the feel of the thing, right? So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, BPX Pro does beat it. But potentially you might find this for possibly significantly cheaper than even the BPX Pro pricing, which was already pretty low. So good on them.
All right, well, let's
moving along.
Yeah, let's go on. We got a bunch of GPU and graphics card related news in the last week. First up, we've got some rumors about the impending launch of mobile Turing, RTX Mobile. Specifically, information about two parts, the RTX 2060 and RTX 2070 Max-Q mobile parts. And I think, Ken, you were following this news a little bit. No, you weren't? Okay.
You don't follow Tom Apisak?
That was a definite no.
Okay.
I will say
this Tom Apisak, or API SAC, as I pronounce it.
No, he's got an Apisak.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
he has an incredible track record.
He's all over the place. I think 3 of our news stories were eventually sourced from him this week.
He has a hell of a track record for the past couple of years. So, that being said, we've got what it is and what the rumors are, and it's mobile Turing.
They are just rumors.
Yeah.
Actually, because we've been seeing stuff about the 2060, whether it was a GTX or RTX since the summer, and then there were leaked screenshots, and then like the performance level was lower on one of them. I think the Final Fantasy 15 one, and then it's like, oh, that might be the mobile variant. So it's kind of not especially clear at this point exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And with the Final Fantasy benchmark, wasn't it just that it was published? I mean, it wasn't even a rumor. It was just they published a chart that listed an RTX 2060.
That I'm not sure about, because the image is a complete chart. So it came from somewhere. It's the same Twitter user leaked the image.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody have any thoughts on this stuff?
seems pretty inevitable.
I mean, you could probably roll into the next news post while we're talking about it.
It's not unexpected. And of course,
it's inevitably inevitable.
And then absolutely related to, I guess,
kind of.
Did we take this off the rundown?
No.
I just combined them in one.
Oh, okay. So also we've got the desktop 2060, RTX 2060. Again, not unexpected. With this one, we have some benchmark results or alleged benchmark results. Okay, this was the one. It was the desktop 2060.
That's that chart.
Yeah, that had the
chart. And if you look at this chart, it has it below the GTX 1070, but the expected performance from other benchmarks and rumors was that it was going to be closer to a 1080, somewhere between a 1070 and 1080. So it just looks like that might have been a mobile part, or else who knows? Like different clocks.
Yeah, that does
suggest mobile.
That does look more like a mobile result in there.
Yeah,
and I finally know how well quadros play.
I mean,
you don't usually see them on.
Who doesn't use a Quadro M6000 to play Final Fantasy 15?
Yeah.
24 gigabytes of frame buffer. That's impressive.
A 2060 that's faster than a Vega 56 and a Radeon Pro Vega 64 would be very impressive. So I don't necessarily think it's a mobile part.
Okay.
Judging by
Interesting.
that, like it's in theory like pretty on par with the Vega 64, which would be what 1080 level. Just judging by
which is
how
why
we've
it's a
seen the
little
whole.
like a little odd that the 1070 sits
Is at
so
the
high
top.
on the list, I guess.
These scores in general are
Maybe that's an overclocked 1070.
maybe.
And why is the 56 higher than a 64?
There's a lot wrong here.
Because
There's a lot happening here.
I don't like this chart. Destroy it.
Yeah.
Get it
there's
away.
just a lot of questions
Credibility
there.
destroyed.
I mean,
Sorry, Appy Stack.
The Final Fantasy 15 benchmark is bad,
Mhm.
and its scores are bad.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
kind of the answer to that.
And it should feel bad.
It should feel bad.
I mean, I would imagine that your max Q stuff is probably going to fall proportionally, roughly where the 10 series stuff fell, right? Compared to
in the 10 series, the max Q, like the 1080 max Q was about a 1070.
right.
Like
So-
it went down a tier.
right. So you probably go down a step for the 2080 stuff, right? Or the 20 series stuff. Sorry, right? And then the 2060 is probably going to be proportionally similar to the higher tiers, like a 1060 was. It'll be a higher step because it's a 20 series part, so it's kind of faster across the board. But it's probably going to be this rough proportion thing. If history has anything to say about it, right? It's probably going to be the same kind of thing. So, I mean, I know these are all rumors, but they're probably safe rumors, just the way that they look. Really,
Yeah, I mean,
they're kind of expected.
yeah,
right.
no surprises.
Yeah.
But looking at the other side of the pond, their pond aisle, industry benchmark, I don't know.
Going to talk
What?
about ARM now? Other side of the pond?
No, AMD is going to have their mobile parts. Their 3000 series Ryzen APUs, and we've got some potential details on those as well.
Hey, who's the source for this leak?
I read it on Twitter.
Well,
Mhm.
AP SAC is back, but I'm sure somebody else has some comments
Interestingly
on this.
enough, the first leak I remember from him, because he does have a very good track record, don't get me wrong, especially in this stuff, was the original mobile APUs, like the 2500U and stuff like that. So, here we go again.
All right.
Well, you better be right, or this is going to turn into one inaccurate podcast.
Turn into
More
yes.
so. Continue its descent.
So this is a 3,000 part series on a Zen Plus architecture.
Yeah, the APUs are a generation behind. So the first APUs are Ryzen 2000 series,
Okay.
built on original Zen, but with Vega graphics.
And then this leak had some Geekbench scores, alleged Geekbench scores. So you look at compared to the i5 8359U, and it's kind of where it's the continuing saga of Intel versus AMD. You've got lower single-threaded performance, but better graphics.
Significantly better.
Yeah, significantly better. It lowers, in fact, lower single-threaded and multi-threaded, at least according to this test. But yeah, the graphics really take the cake.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why it's going to be so interesting to see what happens when Intel integrated graphics go to, what was it, like 64 EUs?
For the Gen 11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be another year, but it'll be interesting to see in comparison to an APU in a mobile device. Although I'm pretty sure Ryzen's still going to have the edge in raw graphics power.
Yep.
We shall see.
Yep. So just a trio of rumors. But again, none of them
All sorts of
unexpected.
rumors. I love reporting on rumors.
how do you feel about speculation?
I
Or
I
baseless
invite
conjecture.
readers to speculate. I'm just here to report the rumors.
Well,
And
then-
you can speculate. I'm not going to speculate. I don't editorialize. I just report just the potential facts and nothing else. Just the theories, the unverified information, the stuff that manufacturers don't necessarily want me to say.
Uh-huh.
But somebody else said it and it was published, and therefore I feel like I can say it because,
In your own
You know.
special way.
All right.
yeah.
Maybe it's just me, but the outfit and the slight rhyme at the end, that looked like the worst Dr. Seuss story.
What are you saying? This is a fashionable scarf.
It is the top seller in Whoville.
I would not,
yeah,
could not
it's
in
more
that
of like a
scarf.
Where's
Kanye
Waldo look
West
here,
in
but-
disguise.
Oh man! All right, well, let's talk about something that's not a rumor, a release that came out just after the podcast last week. In fact, I stayed here all night editing the podcast and had to prepare this article in the morning. So it's the update to AMD's yearly Radeon software driver package. They've adopted for the last, has it been, 4 years now?
I think so. Yeah.
They do a big update once a year. And they've got some
Adding big features and
And this year I was so when I was being briefed on this and they told me the name up front, I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of disappointing because they didn't even give it its own name. They had all these cool names in the past, and last year they called it Adrenalin, and then this year they said it's Adrenalin 2019 edition. Sad trombone. But there's actually some cool stuff in here. I don't know what the reason behind the naming was, but
I think they might have just ran out of names. They were
Maybe.
trying to figure out different words for the color red, and that's difficult.
that's
There's a lot of breeder roses out there. They could have picked a different one.
yeah. But there's a
Blood, Radeon Blood.
See?
Edition.
Radeon hopping mad driver.
just go for it. But
Radeon Smack.
Radeon Rage. No, wait, that's been
Nope,
used.
nope.
somebody
Oh,
get
yeah,
Scott
that's
Wasson
true.
on the phone. We'll get him some
Black
ideas.
tar.
Okay.
Moving on.
But anyway,
No.
so there's a ton of features in this driver. I picked out some of the things that I thought were impressive, and including the expected performance improvements. But we get those with drivers from most manufacturers. They tout better performance in key games. AMD's got a big improvement this year compared to the 2018 or I guess 2017 driver, and that's gains of an average of 15% across. Now they called it the top games, and they did pick out some popular titles, and they based their testing on an RX 570. So a nice, attainable card, a price point that a lot of gamers will be affected by. And you're getting performance ranging from 39% in Battlefield 5, 15% in Tomb Raider, 11% in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, 24% in Star Control Origins. So a lot of improvements there in performance just from the new drivers. And then this year, too, they're introducing, because I guess everybody's doing this, game streaming. So just like Steam Link and GeForce Now, and I guess not GeForce Now, GeForce...
What's the one where you're
the
streaming?
the home GeForce. So it's from streaming from your PC to some other device locally.
What's that called again? I
can't-
forgot the.
It's
I think it's still. I
Is it
think
still
it's
just
GeForce
Now?
now. I
Okay.
think they're both on the same
Oh.
brand, which is confusing.
But basically, you install the driver. As long as you've got a compatible AMD GPU, you download the AMD Link app, it's an app that's been out for a while, but they've updated it to support this new driver, and you can stream right from your PC games as well as just the desktop.
I think the only issue they'll run into is just their latency might be higher on some of these devices that you're, trying to stream to.
I mean, there could be some limitations there, but they mentioned that they really have tuned in a unique way their latency.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
that
I'm sure
it's-
that was a priority.
They didn't provide any specific competitors, and I haven't been able to test this yet personally.
Right.
But they said up to 44% faster responsiveness than other game streaming solutions, and they're really strong on that point. So
Okay.
I assume that there's something there. Maybe it's not 44%, but something to try. And it's interesting. The one thing I was curious about that they couldn't answer for me was, I know Apple has had some issues with iOS and Steam Link because they don't want you buying games through your computer
Right.
because they don't get their cut. And they've come to a resolution there where you don't buy the game through the Steam Link when you're streaming to an iOS device. So I wonder, because they also said they were touting, well, you can just go to your desktop, watch movies, do whatever, productivity.
Mhm.
I wonder how that's going to play out. But,
Yeah, I think it's probably a general enough thing that isn't going to necessarily be on Apple's radar in the same way, because they don't ban remote desktop or VNC apps from the App Store. I
right.
don't
Well, there
think.
was some question about that. I mean, and I guess there was the big picture interface, which
Made it easy to buy
caused,
games.
yeah, that caused that to become an issue, but something to look at there. Also, for the relive streaming stuff, they've got new features for putting in instant replays and sharing your game clips. They've got a new feature where you can quickly build a GIF of of what just happened and instantly share it out right within the streaming software. So you don't need to do anything to share your epic gaming achievements. And then they've got their game advisor. This is not new, but the overlays aren't new, but in these overlays that they have, which run optionally on top of the game while you're playing it, they've got these new advisors which give you real-time information on frame rates and latency, and recommend, again, optionally, you don't have to use this, but they're taking real-time measurements and recommending changes to meet what you say is important to you. So you can say, I want best performance, never lower than 60 frames per second, or I want best visuals. And unlike GeForce Experience, where you do that sort of before you launch the game in the GeForce Experience app, this is happening overlaid on your game, and it's changing dynamically. So if you're playing an open world game, you go into an open world where the demands on the processor are more, it can recommend different settings to make sure you keep the experience you want. So it's interesting. Again, not sure how this will work with every title and in the long term, but definitely great for novices and even some power users who kind of want to get real-time feedback about the performance of their setup. That's something to look for. And there's, again, a ton of stuff. The last thing I'll touch on here, just to keep us moving along, is they've got FreeSync HDR2 improvements, including tone mapping. Because one of the things that we've noticed, and everyone seems to have noticed, which is unfortunate, is that this initial crop of HDR monitors aren't really HDR. It's like Ken's mission. Ryan put so many fake HDR displays in front of him, I thought he was going to lose it. So that leaves a situation where a game has been coded to or created and toned to have a certain spec, a certain quality, a certain contrast, whatever, and you bought an HDR display, but it's not quite able to meet it. So they're going to tone map that in software with FreeSync 2, to correctly display, or as best as possible, so you don't get those washed out areas, you don't get those overly dark areas. And tone mapping with HDR, both in terms of gaming as well as just home theater, that's a big thing, because we're in this transitional period where not everything is HDR, and there's different HDR specs, and making sure that you're still going to get a good experience and it's going to look as close to red as possible.
They're just going to tone map the HDR back down to SDR and go, here.
Yep.
It works.
Possibly.
for bad displays.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I mean, that would be kind of smart on the driver's side. Like,
having that done, so because a lot of consumers are going to buy an quote HDR monitor
and flip on HDR and be like,
why is my Windows desktop so dim?
Yeah.
Other things like voice, they've got voice control. It's a little gimmicky, I think, but you can link it to your phone and say, take a screenshot or whatever. So
overclock my GPU.
Ruby,
actually,
make me go faster.
You can. Actually, I don't think you can set a clock, but you can have it report your clocks to you. But it's free for supported GPUs. Head over to the AMD Radeon website to download the software. And I mean, it's interesting seeing you got NVIDIA's more regular updates. You've got AMD doing the one big yearly update. It's interesting to see those two approaches. We'll see how Intel adopts something as they continue to develop their software side. But interesting. I think a bigger feature set than the name implies, so to speak. The cop out on the name with just the 2019 edition. But all right. Next up into news, we've got a story from Tim here. Intel planning Ghost Canyon. Okay, 10 or X?
Nobody knows. It's the leaked roadmap.
Yeah, so Ghost
X
Canyon.
probably.
Ghost Canyon X.
I don't think Intel generally pulls the X10 thing.
Yeah. And so this is going to be their Nook systems, which have been till now. They've had different form factors. I'm sorry?
Sebastian opened the live stream
I'm
on his phone.
trying to see if the stream is actually working. It's not working on the page, but it's working on the app. But I was treated to a lovely ad first.
Was it a good product?
It was a restaurant. I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, all right.
I was trying to hit the volume down button as fast as I could.
Okay. So the Nooks, till now, they have had different form factors. We've had slightly taller ones that can take 2.5-inch drives. We've had the gaming-focused ones that are wider. And then we look like, from these rumors, there's going to have an even larger form factor that can accommodate discrete graphics, as well as both M.2 and SATA storage. I guess that's possible now on some of the models. But
when is a Nook not a Nook?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good
Oh,
point.
when it has a PCIe 16 by slot.
Nah. This is still a NUC.
Isn't it just kind of a PC at that point?
I
Kinda.
think it's going to get taller. I don't think it's going to support full length graphics cards. Probably like that just looks like a taller.
Well, it's hard to know the scale.
Yeah,
there.
I guess it's difficult to tell the scale.
I mean,
I can't imagine
Well, it's got
shoving a
USB
1080
ports
in
on
that.
it, or are those not USB ports?
that's
an SD slot.
But is it a
Yeah.
micro or full size?
No,
Yeah,
it's
there's-
because those are USB slots in the front.
it looks like USB.
But are they
a full size
USB-C?
SD.
But I think there's a USB C
Yeah.
because they're round, right? I don't
Maybe
know.
it has an expansion slot, but it's only for like, controller cards or something. And you would not be able to put a
They
big...
put the skull on it. It's for gaming.
Is that a render? What is this? Is this a real product?
Well, it looks like it was
Yeah,
cut out of wherever the photo was taken, so as not to implicate the person who took the photo.
Yeah.
But well,
Yeah.
something. Even if we start to get into a philosophical debate about what is a NUC, it is something good to have in terms of a simpler yet still powerful kind of form factor.
It's a really good idea, I think, because you have people buying NUCs and laptops and using eGPU enclosures. What if you just combine that into one product and you didn't have to buy a $250, $300 enclosure with your NUC?
And didn't have to have cables all over your desk.
Yeah. Weird. If you just put the graphics card inside the computer, then you can save space and money.
The
Man.
graphics are in the computer.
I know, right?
All right. Well, something to keep an eye on there. That's the future of the NUC. All right. Next up, we've got a. Did we take this off the list?
The AORUS 10 stream WaterForce motherboard.
Okay. Well, it's not on the rundown, but this is something Tim found for us. It's a Gigabyte's flagship board that has some insane water clocking.
That's a
Water
water block?
clocking. Water cooling. Excuse me. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. If you're
Pretty.
if you're listening, you got to find a picture of this. Check it out at PC Per. Search for it. It's
So it's like edge lit, acrylic covered water blocks.
Well,
Yep.
it says it's a
Channel down.
monoblock.
Yeah. I believe it.
That's one. Holy crap.
That's
Looks like it.
So
impressive.
So it'll be really amazing in that, and I forget what the new version of that coolant is, but there's a more safe slash friendly version of that stuff that has like pearl
View.
look. Is it View?
That was the original version.
Oh, I think there's a newer version of that coolant. In other words, you can actually see it like moving. It has like a really fine.
That's the
kinda
last thing I trust in this system, judging about how gunky the first one got and
Well,
how
no,
difficult
the
that
other-
block would be to clean.
The other stuff doesn't it doesn't do that anymore. It
Oh, they
doesn't
said
separate
the first one didn't do it.
Yeah, they actually fixed it now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what
Imagine
they say.
trying to clean that block.
Well, I'd imagine you can.
I would just use heavy water in that. It's got better thermal density.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll just pick up some heavy water from the corner.
And the
bodega.
power is
Exactly.
obscene.
Just make your own.
It's got two 8-pin CPU power connectors in addition to the usual 24 and a 6-pin PCIe for extra PCIe power. It's mad.
10 gig networking as well.
Is the NIC water cooled too?
Well, I can't really tell. Maybe I don't know.
So that block, I mean, it's just covering the CPU for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's built in.
Mm-hmm.
That's just wow.
And it has RGBs.
It's real.
That's kind of the point, isn't it?
But we don't know pricing. The
Probably about 650, which is lower than I would have thought.
well, I mean, because the board that has equivalent features without the water block is what, 550?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
then it's not
slap another 100
$650.
Yeah, I
bucks.
would imagine
That's
it's more
more
than
than
100.
that.
But
Yeah, and I mean, a good water block costs you like $100.
I think I saw
So-
850 going around for this board.
oh, really?
That might
It was
just be
some ridiculous number for a Z390 board.
that might just be like early gouging a little bit, maybe.
Well, I mean, they're going to make 15 of these. Like, this
Oh.
isn't a high volume.
Well.
I was being. It
And
was
heavy water ain't
hyperbole,
cheap.
but like, this isn't a high volume product. They're
Yeah.
going to make maybe 1,000 of these or something, right? Like, they're not going to sell any of them.
there'll be one or two at QuakeCon.
Yeah, like, you have to be a very special person to buy this motherboard.
So, side note on this, it looks like it has a very long one-piece O-ring that goes around the chamber there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And screws to take it apart to clean it.
Yep.
That looks like a real pain in the ass to get back in there.
It's probably in a groove.
Yeah, I'm sure it's captive, but O-rings never want to go back in the groove, right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, especially if you leave it out overnight at under 32-degree weather, it's explosive.
I got that reference.
It's on Newegg for $8.99.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Wow.
There we go.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Is there free shipping?
No,
Oh, okay.
$5.99.
Damn. All right.
I had to pay shipping on that Ninja 4 that I just ordered on Sebastian's advice.
Oh, you mean the Ninja 4,
Nice.
comma, popular in Japan?
Yes, the Ninja 4 comma
That's what the
popular.
Newegg listing
in
is.
Japan.
That's unfortunate.
Did you get that? Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought shipping was free. I'm
fascinating.
sorry.
Moving along.
Yep. All right. Moving along. Josh is getting irritated. Whoa.
Yeah, so is Sebastian. Look at that. He's covering up.
He's about to make some demands.
All right, let's talk about JEDEC standards,
Yes,
okay?
tell
Now,
us.
they've updated
for
the
a
HBM
minute,
standard. You may have
for a
seen
minute,
news earlier this year.
Sebastian,
Who's talking? Who is
stop.
talking?
This is Josh. Put your hat back
Josh.
on and the thing.
And the
The
thing?
thing?
And
The
the
thing?
and the scarf up
Put
there.
the hat on your thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, are you familiar with the Dungeon Master in the cartoon series Dungeons and Dragons? There you go.
That's a
Bit
really,
of Orko going on there too.
it's really good.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, moving along. JEDEC, HBM.
Okay, so if you've been following news, I think it was earlier this year, Samsung's AquaBolt was announced. Oh, that was way early this year, January. And it was Samsung's higher speed implementation of HBM2. It was 2.4 gigabit per second per pin bandwidth, 1.2 volts, and it had 307 gigabytes per second of bandwidth per stack. And the stacks could be up to, I think, 8 ICs.
That's
Now,
crazy.
this basically takes that Samsung AquaBolt, rolls it into the official standard, but increases the TSV stacks up to 12 as the limit, which allows up to 24 gigabytes per stack. So we're talking about the potential for extremely dense, very tall stacks and products with 24 gigabytes of very high bandwidth memory, where the previous limit was only 8 gigabytes.
Our chips are just
So-
getting taller and taller and taller as the weeks progress.
It's true. It's going to get to the point where there's like this little small PCB on the end of this brick.
We'll just go back to slockets.
Please no.
I imagine that a 12 high stack would create some potential cooling issues, right? Like, even though this is
God,
just DRAM.
Maybe if you make them thin enough, like,
Well, you've got those TSVs to conduct heat through.
yeah, there is an awful lot of metal going through. And I mean, you could get away with making the TSVs even like larger, not for the sake of like you're trying to shrink everything, but you can make them larger in order to try to help have there be more metal conducting heat through the part, possibly.
Put some air holes through there to blow air cooling through.
Ooh, speed holes?
Yeah.
Gotta have speed holes.
Little mini, 10 millimeter fan
You know it.
on there.
Well, who needs it when you have a
Runs-
water block over half of your motherboard?
It runs fast.
Extend it to the HBM.
It runs so fast you don't hear it, but your dog sits there howling at the door.
What was it they used in the Crays, like the Cray 1, Cray 2 for the water cooling loop? It wasn't water, but it was some.
Floor inert,
Was a floor inert they used
Yeah,
there?
I'm sure.
where they just ran it over the chips.
Yeah, it was just like a waterfall. It was
No water blocks because you just pour the coolant over the chips because it's able to handle
Which
it.
almost cost more than the chips did.
Yeah, the floor inert's like $600 a gallon.
worth
Oh, yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's kind of up there.
Yeah. So yeah, Intel 12th generation chips, floor inert loops. Calling it right now.
Sweet.
All right.
Last story of the day. Some not negative developments out of Windows 10. Is that fair?
Yeah, isn't that odd?
Yeah.
It's the Windows Sandbox where the cats go and play.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, play.
Play. Yeah, they play.
I mean, hey, Josh, if they're playing in it, there might be something wrong with your cat. They're not supposed to do
I
that.
used to own a cat that would always sleep in the litter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kept the litter box
Did
very
you
clean.
bathe this cat on a regular basis?
The litter box was naturally very clean because it was sleeping in the litter but not going. in the litter.
Oh, okay. So it just didn't.
I see.
So
Yeah.
it pissed on your shoes and slept
Everywhere
in the litter
else.
box. Okay.
Yeah, everywhere other than the litter, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We didn't have that cat for very long.
Have you ever slept on litter yourself?
No.
I mean,
Yes, because my cat loves bringing it into bed with me.
I mean, you could sleep on like a beanbag chair. It'd be kind of the same, I guess. From a
Yeah,
cat's
like it's
perspective.
all the support you need in all the places you need it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Form fitting. It adjusts as you roll overnight.
Memory foam.
And you'd smell like pine trees.
Just gonna go buy 50 things
Plus,
of litter.
I mean,
and
if you
pour it all over my
have
bed.
an accident while you're sleeping, as some adults
It's
may
not a
or may not
problem.
still have a problem with,
It had
you know,
to go there.
then you don't have to worry about cleanup because the litter is absorbing it.
And then just roll over.
Look, if your standards are low enough, you just don't have to worry about cleanup, regardless of what you're sleeping on.
Mhm.
But anyway,
It's getting kind of dark
this
now, Jim,
feature,
but okay.
this feature.
Yeah. Let's-
Oh, okay, yeah. I am the one who took it too far.
Always, Jim.
Look, we don't want to hear about you
Always.
rolling around in your own filth.
No, if only if.
Disgusting.
Well,
Jim.
all right.
Just
The-
because I pee out into my litter box bed, I mean that's sanitary because I changed the litter.
I
Yeah,
agree.
it sounds
I agree.
perfectly normal.
That
It's got odor neutralizing crystals.
that does sound preferable to my situation. But if you don't want to infect your PC with any dirty, what is the urine equivalent of a computer malicious code?
Windows update,
Bugs. But
which unfortunately you cannot sandbox.
right. Yes.
That would actually make sense.
Raise your hand if you use a VM of the same or maybe a generation older operating system pretty much for this purpose already. I have a VM of Windows 8.1 inside of my Windows 8.1 machine that I simply use
Nobody
to do stuff like
Virus
this.
is already
you
in it.
literally raise your hand? I thought it was rhetorical.
I just
No.
I just run it in production.
Let's explain
What
what,
could go
the
wrong?
this
Just run it in
is.
production.
Like what is
Like if I'm looking for an obscure file or find some supposed like old game or something, like is this executable really what it says
Just
it is?
run
And
it. What's
sometimes
gonna
it's
happen?
not. How about 80 shortcuts all over my desktop and 2 toolbars and a new homepage?
Isn't that the worst feeling when you see a command prompt just quickly flash open on the screen and then
Go,
disappear?
oh
And
no.
then it's too
But
late.
so this is a bit more interesting though, because like, okay, so say you had that Windows VM within your Windows machine, like that's a thing that you constantly got to update. You constantly got to like, right. It looks like this is just spinning off a version
Yes.
of the same stuff that you already have installed. It's just like, just run another Windows. Just do another one like in a window, right? Like
this is cubes for Win32,
Yeah.
Win64.
You've got all
Do
all
it
the
in
DLLs there.
post.
You've got all the other stuff there. Just kind of spin off another process and just make another instance of the operating system, a stripped down one, obviously.
In their list of features, they say that it's pristine every time Windows Sandbox runs. It's as clean as a brand new installation of Windows.
Just
maybe it
like
really is.
You
It's
went
like
ahead
creating
and
it.
scooped all the cat litter out, and it was a finely smelling
got a fresh tub of
layer
cat
of
litter every
clay
time.
and sand that you could lay and roll around in without getting any of the bacteria that is inhabiting the non-clump spaces.
That
It's
Although
as
it being
clean
Windows
as the
10,
other
there'll be a
side
couple
of
of
the
bits you
cat
can never
box.
properly get out.
Somebody get Chris Capicella on the line. We've got the latest Windows 10 marketing strategy.
Okay,
Clean as a litter box.
clean as a litter.
Clean as a freshly cleaned litter box. Yes.
So, it's something that's going to be very helpful. I mean, the one thing, though, is it's coming to Pro and Enterprise. It's not coming to home.
Not you lowly home users.
I mean,
This is a
okay.
professional level option. It reminds me of when Windows was it Windows 7 Professional gave you the option for a Windows XP virtual machine as part
Yep.
of the
Mhm.
OS.
That was for backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
That was like
And it was
to-
super effective.
Well, I mean, nobody really used it because I mean, it just kind of most of the stuff just kind of like worked. if I recall. I don't think there was really that much compatibility issues there.
Printers.
I had a
old
couple,
printers.
but yeah, mostly shit just broke.
I thought there was like driver stuff that it was like the stuff that broke. Mostly, the VM didn't really help you.
Well,
in my experience, at least.
Yeah.
I think,
you know what I mean? Like there was
other
some-
than Vista, if we ever, I'm sure some people actually ran Vista willingly,
did.
but
I
Windows
If you didn't have
7
bad
was for a
hardware,
lot of people their first experience with a 64-bit OS too, unless they were like one of the fringe users of XP 64-bit. Alan,
I was.
That was a great operating.
I was. I was on XP64 all the way through
as it
this.
came
until last Tuesday.
That was a
Until last
beautiful
Tuesday.
OS.
I just installed Windows 10 yesterday.
he's doing that point of sale registry hack to get
get continued
security updates
support.
until next year.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
don't think that
exactly.
works for the 64-bit kernel.
Probably not.
Is it? Oh,
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that is long and unsupported.
oh boy.
It's unsupported when it came out.
Yeah.
That's why it's so safe to run. Nothing runs on it. Not even a virus.
True.
Hey, Far Cry 64 ran on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Needed that memory too.
I did run
Yeah.
that for an embarrassingly long time after. I can't remember all the.
XP 64.
I think I retired my box just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember all the workarounds I was doing to get various things to work properly. Those were the days.
Yeah, the days when you had to do workarounds to Windows to get stuff to work properly. Yeah, those are gone.
Well, those are gone.
You,
Hey,
you
but
had to do
speaking
all
of
sorts of weird
Windows,
shit in Linux back
the
then
new-
too.
Windows
Yeah.
Sandbox apparently is
back
able to
then,
pass
too.
through hardware calls to your actual GPU. I'm trying to continue this story, but
Okay. Well,
And then it was also originally reported that this was going to be showing up in insider builds as early as next week, and then that was taken off. Like Mary Jo Foley reported it, and then the blog post was apparently revised, and it's not coming until next year. So this is something we will see next year at some point.
all right.
All right.
And we'll see how many other problems they can introduce before then. If we are still running working Windows 10 by the time this hits.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Josh and Jeremy, did you have picks of the week you want to throw in there real quick?
I did throw them in there.
What are
I'm
you
not seeing
talking
anything
about,
for you.
Willis?
Unless, did Google crash?
Yeah,
Google
I
must
have
have
it all.
crashed for
It's
us.
all
I'm
on
looking
my
at them.
screen.
I'm right there.
Well, okay. Well, I had to force refresh it. It's not my fault.
I was at an
Thanks,
advantage because I
Roll.
rebooted my laptop 3 times during this podcast.
Yeah.
So I have an up-to-date copy.
Ooh, I like Jeremy's pick.
Ooh.
It's pretty
All right.
and shiny.
I think I got that in the right order. We'll figure it out. All right, so I'll do my pick real quick. I've mentioned this before at various points, but if you're not familiar with the Computer Chronicles, it was a PBS produced show. I think it started in like 82 or 83, early 80s.
Who was the guy that was always the
Stuart Chaffee was the host, and initially his co-host was Gary Kildall of Digital Research,
Oh yeah.
the guy who got screwed over by Bill Gates and then
Yeah.
ended up
Was he the CPM guy?
Yep. Tragedy, because you can see him in these early shows. He was smart. I mean, not that Bill Gates is not smart, but he was smart. He was engaging.
He knew
and-
what he was talking about.
yeah, he had a true, genuine passion for this stuff, and not only on the technical side, but a lot of times they talked about the emerging consumer electronic market, and he would show a lot of genuine interest in that as well. And he unfortunately never recovered from having his company screwed over by Microsoft and
IBM.
Not many do.
Right? Yeah.
Look at this computer. I don't know if it's going to show up in the same place. Computer Chronicles, Beginner's Guide to PCs.
Yeah.
On the left there. Look at that. Look at that lovely
And
PCB.
from let's see,
Oh,
That's a video
pretty.
card
from
of some form.
1993.
I
What was
think I
that
own that
episode?
video card.
But
Mm.
it was a weekly show. There's hundreds of episodes, and if you get into binging them, you kind of time travel from the earliest days of the personal computer to the show when it ended in about 2002 or 2003.
Check out the Bill Gates profile one right next to it. Like that'd probably be an
The
interesting
one
episode
beside it,
to
I'm more
watch.
worried about. That looks a bit like Dreamweaver.
I think that is Dreamweaver. I was just wondering that. It's like, is that Dreamweaver?
Oh man.
But
It's like those were the tapes. Like it's
Yeah.
like they just digitized the old tapes.
They
It's like the
did,
beginning of the episode shows the episode number.
yep, because they would release the tapes. You could buy the tapes individually for like $25 a pop back in the day. But somebody a few years ago digitized them, uploaded them. I was trying to catalog them for our Plex server, and they're missing a few, but there's mostly there.
Of course, you're doing that.
This
You
because
see, some people share illicit content through Plex servers. We share the Computer Chronicle.
That's true. I would watch this off of Jim's Plex server.
and
check
Can you
out that
upload that
V-Hold.
you don't see in 4K one as well?
well, that's a different channel, but yeah. So if you have an interest in this stuff, if you have an appreciation, what are we laughing at?
The V-Hold on the old tape.
The
Oh, yeah.
tracking.
Yeah, the tracking.
Some of them are, some of the videos are better than others. Some have kind of messed up audio. Sometimes there's tracking issues.
Well, the
But-
tapes are like,
but they're watchable.
decades old.
They're
right?
watchable, and you go through the whole history of personal computing up until
Wow.
2003, and you're gonna binge it, and you're gonna. I mean, I loved it. I still go
You'll
back
be
to watch
binging for
these
a
things,
while.
and it's super interesting.
They
So
didn't
check.
have seasons of this. They just kept going.
There are seasons. I mean, there's a classification for the episode ordering and stuff, but
They were probably doing a good number of episodes per year. I would
It's a
imagine.
Model M when it was new.
Yeah. Yeah.
so check that out again.
That's good stuff.
The Computer Chronicles on YouTube. It's an unofficial channel, but it's linked to an archive.org upload archiving project. So you'll find it. Just search Computer Chronicles and
Oh, and those
Have some
videos
fun.
are also there, I would imagine.
yes,
on
the
archive.
YouTube is a mirror of what was uploaded from the original tapes to archive.org. All right. Next up is Jeremy with a pick related to something we talked about on the show today.
Yeah, well, I thought, oh, hey, Ninja 4 deals. That's awesome. And apparently those deals do not expand to Canada. In fact,
Wow.
they were ridiculously expensive.
Well, you get
What?
healthcare, so
This popped up, which is an amazing equivalent and 25% off. So if you got the normal size type processor as opposed to the Threadripper size, the U14S is got to be one of the better air coolers in the market right now. Cost you a little bit, and as Sebastian mentioned, the mounting mechanism might not be your favorite. I kind of like them. But this thing is powerful, and it's just stupidly quiet. So if you're shopping, and I wouldn't stick it in a stocking because it will tear through that stocking.
Dude,
But-
those things shred anything.
those are sharp edges.
Are those the
They
ones
hurt.
those the ones we use here, like all over
Yeah.
the place? Yeah,
Yeah.
we have those all over the office. They're good.
Yep, so
You
if
can
you're looking
barely
for a
hear 'em.
heatsink,
They're really
good deal up
quiet.
here.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Josh.
Okay, well, you know what? I upgraded my mouse from the G502 to the new G502 Proteus Spectrum, I believe it is called. It's got a new
New look to it.
no, it's pretty much the same look.
Got
It's got
RGBs?
more programmable.
It's got a turntable.
LEDs, but it does have a new sensor in there as compared to the last, and it is now for $50. If you would have gotten it a couple of weeks ago, it was $36. But still, for $50, it's a great.
And it has.
We got it right here. at
Well, that's the old
studio.
version.
Yeah,
That's the old
I
version.
guess the old
The
version.
G502 Jim literally had in his
I
hand.
looked down, I was like, that looks like the mouse in my hand.
It is. It's a great mouse.
Although-
it feels
although
good.
it doesn't have
it tracks
the-
well. You can change colors. You do all kinds of things.
Did the original one have the weights?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They all
I don't
have the
even know-
weights,
I don't even know
but
how they
this
go
one
in there.
has an improved sensor, and you have a much larger, spectrum of colors to do with the logo.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Well,
did
it's
you
only
set?
$10 more up here.
Did you set an adjustable weight for yours, Josh?
Yeah, I put all the weights in because I like a heavy mouse. You know what I'm
But
saying?
you want a strong wrist.
Sure.
Yeah. Needs to build up those muscles.
How do you grip your mouse, Josh?
Like a friendly stranger.
I'm not really sure what that means. You like a claw grip? Do you use a palm grip? Do
That's
you
if you use
use
a
your
Maybe
fingertip
just use
grip?
your other hand.
Yeah,
You gotta
that's,
go
that's
with
your
the lefty.
non-dominant hand. That's the friendly stranger. Sorry.
This will be the last show.
Not just of the year.
Casper
just
is never
ever.
going to advertise with us again.
What? They're making beds, man.
Ooh, speaking of, tonight's show is brought to you by insert ad here.
JoshTech.com. Use offer code JoshTech15 at checkout for 15% off.
That's right.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Ken.
Alan, what do you got for us?
My pick is something that there should be a review up for tomorrow. I was pretty impressed with it. So like a year or two ago, we reviewed a thing called the Rapid Spar from a company called Deep Spar. Actually, it's more than a year or two ago now. Man, we were in the old office. It's like 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, there's a company that makes data recovery products, and they're moving into more forensic products as well. Forensics is kind of a different animal because it's where you have to be able to make sure that you're not just trying to recover data from the thing, but you're just trying to basically make a forensic image of it. And as I learned back when I was in the Navy and I was at a place where we had to do like forensic stuff all the time, there would be like some compromised computer and we would get the hard drive from it and we'd have to make a forensic image of it, right? And maybe you needed law enforcement to look at it and you need to be able to prove to them that you only passed it through a thing called a write blocker, a device that will prevent the host from ever doing any writes to the to the thing you're trying to read from. Well, this is a write blocker called the Gardonix. I think that's how you pronounce that. It's from Rapid or the Deep Spar guys. It's designed for USB devices. That is, be it a flash drive, all the way up to certain USB connected hard drive docks. I think the chipsets they favor, I think, are the ones that are as media. So basically a USB dock that is known to have an as media chip in it. But the idea is this is a device that sits in the middle, prevents the computer from doing any writes to the thing, but also, since it comes from guys that usually do data recovery, it has some extra tricks up its sleeve in that if you're trying to read from, say, a flaky USB drive on Windows, and Windows is only going to let it time out a couple of times before the drive just goes away, right? This thing is able to basically mimic the device you plug into it. So when you plug this into the computer, nothing really much happens. Once you plug a USB device into it, be it a flash drive or a hard drive in a dock or anything like that, it kind of like once it mounts, this black box is able to keep that connection persistent as far as Windows knows. Mm-hmm. So then if you start imaging from the thing and say it's a hard drive in a dock and it starts getting read errors and things like that, things that would normally time out, this box can keep Windows satisfied while preventing Windows from doing any writes to that hard drive and letting you do the image without timeouts kind of wrecking your day. And there's like 2 different versions of it. There's like a professional license for it, which lets you have more control over like other things. Like you can actually, instead of just having the drive connect to the host in a way that you can't really browse the file system, you have to use like an imaging tool, some sort of imaging software. There's a pro version that lets you actually see the partitions and kind of dig through the drive and even do it in a way that like normally Windows would choke on a drive that was connected through a write blocker, because Windows would try to do writes. Like Windows does writes to any hard drive you try to mount. So this thing's able to like fake the writes. So when Windows says, hey, I want to write some update to the master file table on this drive, and the Gardonix thing is just like, okay, yeah, I wrote it. And meanwhile, it just black holed it, right? So that the drive is still connected, but you're only reading from it. So that's cool too, right?
So this way your litter box remains clean.
Yes, exactly. But the other cool thing is that through not just this box connected to a USB device, but a USB dock with an as media chip in it, this little guy is able to send resets to the drive, similar to what the Rapid Spar did. It's able to send resets over USB to cause the as media controller to reset. So if you had a hard disk that was going to take a minute to time out on a bad sector, this can actually issue a hardware reset through USB, even through a dock. So in other words, that gives you control somewhat over how fast those resets happen. And if you're not that worried about getting every single last sector off of the disk, you just want to try to get through the bad spots and get to the good stuff before the hard drive dies completely, you can turn that timeout really pretty low. So it just waits a couple of seconds on each bad sector and then moves on to the next one. Really cool stuff, especially also it's a write blocker and also it's USB 3, because write blockers for the longest time were lagging way behind on other stuff. So you'd have to deal with like USB 2 trying to image a 2 terabyte hard drive. And that's like, even if there were no bad sectors, maybe the hard drive would just die of old age by the time you were done with the image, right? And just take forever. So really cool stuff.
Sounds expensive.
I think it's like $300 or $350 or something for this box. But
also they need to update their certificate for their store.
Oh
yeah, that's
so it's $350. If you want the pro version, you have to add even more than that, like another $400. But realize this is not so much meant for just any average person to just pick up, right? It's meant for like an actual forensic shop. So, and that's unfortunately that's like the price points you're gonna spend. Like a good write blocker costs you like $300. So this one's a good write blocker. Oh, and also, you know, has these extra features that lets you get through, you know, bad sectors. And it keeps a detailed log of all that stuff. So then you'd add that to your report, you know, if you were trying to, you know, have some sort of forensic report that you were providing back to some agency or some company or something, right?
Sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I plugged a few hard drives into the dock that was connected to it. And I mean, I confirmed that this is not a bottleneck. Like it's going to go pretty much, you can go full speed USB 3. So pretty much the hard drive is really the limit, or the interface is the limit, which is good because usually imaging things is painful if you're trying to also block writes. So
I have a Samsung T3 external drive that randomly and frequently just drops from Windows, and then it shows back up again, then it drops. It'll do it right in the middle of like, can't remember if it does it on reads or writes, but it sounds like
that might be a power
some sort
delivery
of corruption or something.
Yeah.
But
well, so one of the examples, there's like a video that they have if you dig around on their site. But they even show while the imaging program is running on through this box to the hard drive that's in the dock, they pull the hard drive out of the dock while the imaging process is going. And then a few seconds later, plug it back in, and it just picks it right back up from where it left off. And Windows is none the wiser, right? You'd never be able to do that with any other thing I can think of to connect the drive to the system. So that's pretty robust as far as error handling.
It's like a Drobo.
No, it's not even.
No.
It's like no.
Yeah,
but they're just showing like the initial plugging it in. But yeah, they're just showing like, you know, your imaging drive, and you know, it's somewhere through that window, through that through that video they show it.
Who's next?
You are, good sir.
Sebastian wants me to buy this thing.
I do, because okay, if you're interested in,
Is this partly my fault?
Yeah,
I linked to it a while ago. Yeah,
you did, and then it dropped. It was 200, then it was it's 170 currently. But this, I watched this with interest when it was first released. The FIO, I think it's FIO. I think of two I's as E because of the Wii, I guess.
Yeah.
FIO. Anyway, this is the M7. It's a high resolution lossless music player, a digital audio player, or DAP. This thing uses the ESS Saber. It's a 9018 variant. What's interesting to me about this is I have a digital audio player that was considerably more than $169 that uses the exact same 9018 family of DAC chip. The difference between them is just like the power draw and the package, I believe. So they all have the same native
is it
DSD
the Onkyo
support.
or the Panasonic one?
What?
I thought Onkyo made one of these.
They do
players like this.
They do. It's more expensive. Pioneer has one. There's a family of smaller players like this that use similar internals. This one's interesting to me because not only does it use the 9018, which has extensive native support and true native like 44.1 and 48 kilohertz sample capability, so it'll do like real 88.2, which is something that you run into if you listen to like DSD rips, or almost always 2488.2. Anyhow, not only does it have all of the basic like high-end playback capability, but it also has like every wireless standard supported. So it does LDAC from Sony, it does aptX HD and regular aptX, the regular SBC Bluetooth stack is supported. I believe it also does AAC. Not sure though, but pretty much anything can connect to this thing wirelessly, and you can negotiate all the way up to like aptX HD if your device, like if your headset supports it. So, and of course it also does wired. It has a built-in headphone amplifier. So I have not personally heard this yet, but I'm intrigued, especially because it's using a Samsung. It's the Exynos 7270. I had to bring this up because this is hilarious. The DAP that I have is powered, and I'm using air quotes, by a Cortex A5 running at 625 megahertz. That is a single core Cortex.
Battery
The thing
life's
is
probably
so
great.
slow.
Is he
And it's
demonstrating
running-
how slow it
Well,
is?
go ahead.
Was that pause to demonstrate just how slow?
That was the Shatnerian
I see.
interpretation of it. And yeah, mine is running a 720p OLED screen on us, and it's got a very polished looking UI, and it runs at like 5 frames a second or something. So a much faster, more modern version. I can't speak for the headphone amplifier in it, but if you're using wireless, then that's not relevant. So especially if you have some people buy nice wireless headphones. I'm not naming any names. And then they use iPhones, which means when they connect their iPhones to their nice wireless headphones, they're using AAC, which is fine. Sounds fine. Sounds better than SBC,
Or a butt coming up.
but doesn't sound as good as aptX.
Yeah.
But you will never see aptX on an iPhone for reasons that are probably obvious to people who follow the industry.
Qualcomm.
So yeah, I use a Samsung phone right now, and one of the great things about this is if I go to developer mode, I can just manually on the fly select whatever wireless codec I want. So if I'm listening to a headset that supports aptX, I can just go AAC and I'll listen to aptX. Okay, I'll go back to SBC, and you can like really, really hear the difference when you're flipping between them. So anyway, it's interesting. It seems expensive for something that's a single task, dedicated music player, and most people just want to use their phone, but it's
And FM
very
radio.
extensible.
How much space does this thing have?
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it just uses micro SD cards. Most of these have limited internal storage.
Yeah.
Mine has 64 gigs.
How does
Micro
this
SD
compare?
cards up to 512 gigs, which is a fair amount.
You'll spend more on that than you will on this player if you need that much capacity.
Yeah, you can get 64 gigs for $8 now.
I mean, you get a decent amount of music even in like FLAC.
So you can like have 5 or 6 of them and call them your mixtapes. Swap them in and out.
We actually
You want
have
really
that.
small ones for that. Retro. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
using a
definitely.
512 megabyte micro SD card for my mixes, my 64K MP3 files.
Thick as a brick, disc 1, disc 2, and disc 3.
Actually, that SanDisk Ultra 400 gig micro SD is only like $92.
Nice.
Hmm.
Anyway,
400 gig on a micro SD card.
Yep. All right, well, let's end it there. Let's let people enjoy their holidays. Put as much distance between this train wreck and their magical Christmas
No, this
holiday
was
as possible.
This was magic, Jim.
It was a kind of magic.
Yeah.
There's something about these disjointed, meandering,
Litter filled.
long-winded
All right, cut his mic.
John Denver inspired.
podcasts.
All right. Well, like we said, that's the show, and that'll be our last for the calendar year. We'll be off next week for Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. Sebastian and I will be out at CES, so we'll be giving you updates from there as we check out the show and meet with all the tech and PC hardware companies. So stay tuned there, and then stay tuned for our plans for that Extra Life stream. Again, that's pcpro.com/extra life to donate, and we'd really appreciate that. Help do something awesome to end the year here. But we hope everyone has a safe, happy, wonderful holiday and new year. And thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you next year.